Chapter 20 Memories. Jeff the Killer's Backstory. I looked out the window, the scenery passing by quickly as we sped down the freeway. We were on our way to a new house my parents bought. It's supposed to be a better neighborhood than our last one. Since my dad had just recently gotten a huge promotion, they decided it would be better to move somewhere more fancy and closer to his work. My mom is still working, surprisingly. Probably something Dad coaxed her into. Lou was sitting next to me in the car. He was silently looking out the window. He was younger than me by a year, but we were as close as can be. My mom used to joke about how close we are, but stopped when we stopped hanging out around her. My dad was focused on driving while Mom watched us through the rearview mirror. It was annoying and extremely creepy at the same time. I looked at Lou, who was still plenty busy with staring out of his window. I sighed. It was boring as fuck in here. Eventually, I noticed we were finally exiting the freeway, and I felt overjoyed to be away from the boring scene. It was a huge relief that we were finally going to be going to the new house. Lou looked at me excitedly, and I couldn't help but smile at him. We both looked out his window, waiting to see the new house come into view. I knew Lou was excited, but my excitement was limited to getting out of this damn car. Wouldn't it be fun? New people, new places, new ways to hurt others. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the voice. I almost forgot he was even there. But then again, he always talks when I want him to. It's the most annoying shit I've had to deal with. Like, ever. Oh, now you're calling me annoying. Shut up. I muttered to myself, looked down, and started to fumble with my fingers. When I looked up, my mom was looking at me again through the mirror. I saw her glare and looked out Lou's window to watch as my dad came into a neighborhood. It was definitely way more fancy than our last neighborhood. In fact, it looked nothing like where we last lived. I felt awkward sitting in the car while Lou talked to me excitedly. I couldn't share his excitement, though. I knew that kids with richer parents tend to judge others more, and with him around, I'm going to become an easy target. He's beyond persuasive. In fact, one time he convinced me to punch a kid. If that doesn't say anything, I don't know what will. Now, don't blame that on me. You know that you wanted to punch that annoying little brat. Stop it. I mumbled to myself. I could hear his laughter echo in my head, and I could feel my head began to ache. I felt the weird sensation to claw at my skin and break it open, but I squeezed my hands, hoping the feeling would go away. Then his annoying voice started talking again. Come on, Jeffrey. You know you want to hurt someone. Maybe you should hurt your mother, your father. No, I have a better idea. You should kill your brother. I gripped the sides of my head and leaned forward as close to my lap as I could get. My head was aching in massive pain that I knew was his fault. Tears surfaced in my eyes and I squeezed them shut. Stop, please. I muttered to myself. Tears escaped my eyes and I knew I should tell my mom, but last time I did, she simply dismissed it. Jeff, honey? I heard my mom ask. The pain suddenly subsided, and I could feel Lou looking at me. I removed my hands from my head and sat up. I'm fine. I just had a headache. I said, covering up the fact I could hear a voice that they couldn't. Everyone went quiet, and Lou was giving me a weird look. Maybe we should get you a doctor. Headaches that frequent can't be good. My dad still focused on driving. I simply nodded, afraid to reveal about the voice I hear so often. Lou reached over and grabbed my hand tightly. I looked at him as he gave me a worried look. I smiled and squeezed his hand to know that I was just going to be fine. That I was going to be just fine. He smiled back at me, and I looked out the window behind him to see us driving up a hill. The moving truck stopped in front of the lawn, and the movers began to get out of the front. Lou let go of my hand and we got out of the car. Mom went to open the truck with a few of some immediate belongings we needed. Mom gave me the box that we labeled with my name, which evidently had my stuff in it naturally. I took my stuff towards the front door to the overly fancy house. My dad was already on the porch unlocking the door for the movers, who were currently taking a dresser out from the back of the truck. I went inside and followed my dad into the kitchen. I set my box onto the kitchen counter, along with Lou a few minutes later. The movers began moving the stuff into the living room for now. Mom came into the kitchen, slammed down a box, and looked at me and Lou. Go pick out your rooms. There are 2 upstairs. We hope that you won't fight. My mom said, eyeing us. We hardly ever fought about anything, so I simply rolled my eyes as we both walked upstairs. Lou ran up the stairs and peeked into each room before picked the one down the hall. I looked at the room he left for me and scoffed. He took the one with the window. Figures. I looked around the decent-sized square room. It had beige walls and the same hardwood floor that was in the rest of the house. The closet was small, which I expected, but it had enough room for me to lay down in if I wanted to. I smiled to myself, as Lou came into my room, smiling as well. I looked over at him and raised an eyebrow at his childish grin. I walked towards him, gently turning him around and pushing out the room. Whatever it is you're smiling about, you can tell me about later, I said, closing the door behind him. I leaned against the door and slowly slid my back against it. I saw on the floor, my back against the door. It was so quick, except for the sound of my dad's loud voice from downstairs. Jeffrey, you know, the closet would be good for hiding a body. You should kill someone. Kill someone, Jeff. I'm gonna hurt someone, I said to the voice that emitted from the emptiness of the room. Ah, but you want to. You want to kill someone, Jeff. You want to hurt someone, Jeff. You know you want to. Shut the fuck up, you bastard, I said, grinding my teeth together. I heard his familiar laugh echo in the empty room. You shouldn't treat me like that, Jeff. You know that I'm the only one that truly understands you. Not even Lou understands you. I know what you want, Jeff. You want to kill someone. Shut up! I yelled. I listened as the voice echoed in my room. I breathed in and out, my breath becoming uneven as I sat in the room. There was a knock on my door, and an unfamiliar panic shred through me, like I had done something wrong. Jeff, honey, the movers are going to bring your bed in a moment. If you could open the door and be ready to tell them where you want it. My mom said through the door. My breathing evened, and I stood up. I opened the door, and she smiled at me before walking away down to Lou's room. I set the door against the wall as much as I could, and went and leaned against the wall. I wanted my bed by the closet, so I can be lazy in the morning. Eventually, after what seemed like forever, the movers came in, and I told them where to put the bed. They left to, naturally, move more stuff around the house. I quickly shut the door behind them, only to hear my mom yell my name from downstairs. I opened the door again, only to slam it shut behind me. I came downstairs, my hands in the pockets of my jeans. The movers left with grim looks. It was plain out obvious that they hated their job, but had to do it or they wouldn't have a house anymore. I walked towards the kitchen and dining room where my mom was standing next to the counter, her arms crossed. Lou came to get his stuff. Why is yours still here? She asked. Her eyebrows furrowed and eyes unforgiving. I slipped the box off the counter into my arms, looking down at my mom. I was a good 3 inches taller than her right now. but she still treats me like a kid. Maybe it's because I want to relax before having to move more crap, I said. My mom glared at me, disgusted by the use of language. She unfolded her arms as my dad walked up behind her, mad as well. Jeffrey, you are almost an adult. You need to grow up a bit, he said. I rolled my eyes and started walking away angrily. Don't call me Jeffrey, I muttered, angered by when the voice and my dad's voice seemed to overlap in my head. Jeffrey, you know I don't tolerate muttering, my dad yelled at me. I grunted as I began walking up the stairs. I said to fuck off! I yelled down the stairs with satisfaction when I heard my mom gasp, followed by my dad's angry yell. I smiled to myself, feeling the upward curve on my lips. Lou stood by in his doorway, shocked with my language suddenly shifting. It's how I thought, and acting more like an adult includes cursing. So, whatever. I opened my door and entered the room, sitting in the box next to my bed. I went back and closed the door to my room. Time skip. I had fallen asleep last night with the voice laughing hysterically in my ear for no apparent reason, leaving me with a horrible headache. I rubbed the side of my head as I sat up in bed, yawning loudly. I stretched my arms over my head and slowly got out of bed. I went downstairs, greeted by the lively chatter of my family. One I didn't want to be a part of at this moment, but what caught my eye was that Lou was excited about something. Not that it isn't usual, it's just unusual for this early in the morning. I got myself some cereal and sat down at the table. My mom smiled brightly, and Lou looked at me excitedly. I looked up from the table at their faces and gave them a questioning look. What? I asked, my mouth full of soggy cereal. My mom sighed, but then went back to her overly cheerful state. Our neighbors came by after he fell asleep and invited us all to her son's birthday party next weekend, my mom said, smiling. I rolled my eyes and took in another spoonful of cereal. How old is he? I asked plainly before taking in another mouthful of cereal. My mom sighed and looked at me with a stern, yet at the same time not stern, look, probably because of her excitement. He's turning 8, and his name is Billy. He's a really sweet child, my mom said, looking at my dad with eyes I couldn't read. He looked up from his newspaper to see my mom's face and simply smiled and shook his head. I watched the exchange silently before breaking the exciting mood in the kitchen. And you don't even think that I hate little kids? I said, and my mom turned towards me, trying to glare her way into my soul. My dad set down his newspaper, his eyebrows furrowed. Really? You were a child once, Jeffrey, and one day you'll be wanting kids of your own. My dad said, his voice firm. The voice chuckled in my head and made my head ring slightly. I groaned and got over with my empty bowl of cereal. Oh, when they scream, they run around everywhere, they tend to like to climb all over you, they don't sit still, they cry over everything, and they're usually spoiled brats in neighborhoods like this. I countered, setting my bowl in the sink. My mom stood up and walked over to me and glared me down. You will go to this party next Saturday, like it or not. Now go get ready to catch the bus, she said, infuriated with my previous response. I once again rolled my eyes and left the kitchen. I went back to my room and grabbed some clothes that had been in the box I carried upstairs yesterday. I went to the bathroom next to my room and set my clothes on the counter. I set down a towel I don't remember picking up and took a quick shower. Sadly, I still went to the same school, except now I had to ride a bus with other sweating teenagers and fake bitches. Once I was dressed and out of the shower, I brushed my teeth, hair still wet, and walked out of the bathroom. When I got back downstairs, despite my mom still being mad at me, she handed me my backpack gently. Now go. The bus gets here at 7:30, she said, rushing me and Lou out the door. We both slung our backpacks over our shoulders and went towards the sign at the end of our street. The sign was the standard bus stop sign with a weird drawing of a school bus and guy getting on. We stood on the curb, waiting patiently for the bus to get here. Lou looked at me and tilted his head in question. I looked at him, and the voice began laughing hysterically. "Why are you dressed so darkly?" he asked. The voice made my head sting in pain. And the next words that formed on my lips didn't seem mine, but his. "Because I wanted to." I said with a smirk. Lou laughed at me and punched my arm playfully. I rubbed my arm, pouted with exaggeration. As we waited, some guys came by on skateboards and stopped at us before they entered the middle of the road. There were 3 guys, all 3 of them different from each other. There was a chubby guy, a guy that was probably 6 foot, and then this small guy in the center of them. I glared at them as Lou's face was one of awe. "Hey, looks like we have a new source of allowance," the smaller said, chuckling to himself along with the others. I rolled my eyes and was about to walk away with Lou when they grabbed my arm. "Now, look here, buddy. It's rude to walk away when you don't even know our names." The taller of the 3 sat glaring down at me. "I don't care if he's a few inches taller than me. I bet you I can still beat his damn ass." "I'm Randy. That guy that just talked to you is Keith. And this is Troy," the smallest of them said. He smirked as he got off his skateboard. I shook my arm from Keith and glared at them. "Are you gonna give us your name before we take your wallet, punk?" Troy asked, a knife suddenly in his hand. My eyes narrowed, and I stepped towards him, showing how scared I was. "How about no, you fat motherfucker?" I said. I watched as Randy clicked his tongue and held out a knife. He pointed at me, and Keith punched me in the face. I heard Troy start to harass Lou about some damn money as I recompose myself. "You ain't as tough as you look, huh? Nothing but a big pussy," I heard Randy say from inside, and something in me snapped. I stood up despite my nosebleed, and I sent a punch back at Keith as he tried to pull a knife on me. I grabbed it from him and stabbed his bicep. He screamed loudly and held his arm, which was bleeding profusely. I turned around just as Troy was running at me with his knife. As Troy approached, I ducked, then stabbed him in the stomach, leaving the knife jutting out of his side. Just like Keith, Troy screamed bloody murder as he writhed in pain on the ground. As Randy began to try to run away, I grabbed his arm with my brother's wallet and bent it at an awkward angle until I heard a satisfying snap and a crack of bone. I slipped the knife out of his hand and stabbed him once in the awkwardly bent arm. He screamed again and clenched his right arm under the knife wound. When I stepped away, I grabbed Lou's wallet off the ground and handed it to him. He was looking down the street, and I followed his gaze to the bright yellow school bus headed towards us. I grabbed Lou by the wrist and began running in the opposite direction. We ran all the way to the school, which was a good 2 miles or so away. When we got there, we were quiet about what happened. We acted like it didn't happen at all, especially when the news started to get around. I noticed relatively quickly, though, that the voice seemed to be much more quiet that day, but I pushed it off to the side. There was just some days where he didn't talk much. When we got home, I wanted to go straight to my room, but my mom just had to call me to the kitchen. I sighed and rolled my eyes. I went back downstairs, and I had already gone up on. I walked into the kitchen to see my mom standing next to some police officers. Lou was sitting at the table and was being really silent as he looked at me with worried eyes. I looked at my mom questioningly, and she sat down at the table, not saying anything to me. "Jeffrey, we would like to talk to you about what happened at your bus stop this morning," they said, looking at me with subtle stern glares. I acted confused as I looked at them. 3 young men about your age were injured this morning at your bus stop, all 3 with stab wounds, and one with a broken wrist, and you were seen fleeing the scene with your brother," one of them said, and I gave an odd look. I looked at Lou, who I had a feeling ratted me out. I would let you attack them, but you're not that stupid. I'm guessing, since no one likes to get shot. I was about to speak as Lou suddenly stood up from his chair and looked at the cops with a look of pride I knew he was faking. Then the thought dawned on me. Was Lou going to take the blame? Officers, it was me. I beat up the kids. Jeff was playing a cover for me, but I did it, he said, looking absolutely crazy. I felt my resolve crack as I watched my mom's expression completely change, and the cops frown. They motioned for him as I stood in absolute shock. Lou? I whispered as I cuffed him, and then walked out of the house. I stood there for a long time before going to my room where I could try to take in what happened just then, to try to understand Lou's actions. Time skip. I woke up my mom shaking me awake on a Saturday morning. I groaned loudly as she turned on the light to help wake me up. I reached for my blanket to cover my face when my mom pulled it off my bed and held it in her arms. Jeff, it's Billy's birthday party today. You need to get up, she said. I groaned as I sat up and glared at her, unwilling to go to some little kid's party. I don't even know this kid, and you expect me to go to this kid's stupid party? Hell no, I said, trying to wake myself up. She frowned and threw my blanket across the room. I don't care, Jeffrey. You will get up and get dressed. I will not leave until I see you looking through your closet for clothes, she said, sternly crossing her arms. Sometimes I really hate my mom's stubbornness. I pushed myself out of bed, lazily, walked over to my closet to grab something to wear. My mom left, and I decided to grab something that would piss them off to a great extent. I grabbed a white hoodie and some darker jeans. I grabbed some black All-Stars, which are basically cheaper Converse. I put them on and didn't even bother brushing my hair. I left my room, closing the door. I stopped in the hallway and led towards Lou's door. I took a deep breath and went downstairs reluctantly. When I got into the kitchen, I saw both of my parents dressed in dark suits. The only difference was that my mom was wearing a skirt instead of pants. Jeffrey, what do you think you're wearing? My dad asked me sternly. I rolled my eyes and leaned against the banister. I'm pretty sure I'm wearing clothes, Dad, I said mockingly. My dad was about to comment on what I had said when my mom cut him off. As long as he's dressed, I don't care what he's wearing. Now let's go before we're late, my mom said, pushing me towards the door. My dad locked up the house and then walked over with us to the neighbor's house. We were welcomed in, and I noticed all of the adults were wearing fucking suits. I was led outside to the backyard, where plenty of kids were playing. Most of them had cowboy hats on and were using their hands to make fake guns. I leaned against the fence, not wanting to take any part in it. Several kids ran up to me as to try and get me to play, but I completely ignored them. This was pointless, and an absolute waste of my time. I could be doing something better right now, like my homework, for example. I sighed and crossed my arms as I tried to find something interesting to do. Just as I was going to walk inside to find my parents so I can leave, the kids stopped playing as the same guy from the bus stop walked into the yard. When they saw me, they laughed and glared at me. Randy had a thick cast over his arm, but from the looks of it, it wasn't going to stop him from trying to kill me. Oh, well, if it isn't my best friend, Randy said, walking towards me, smirking. He had a gun to his side, and I began to wonder if he had planned to rob this place or something. When he got close, he used his handgun, his good hand, and punched me as hard as he could. When I leaned away from his punch to avoid it, he kicked me in the gut, sending me to the ground in pain. He began to repeatedly kick me in the gut as I tried to crawl away from him. I screamed in pain as he kicked me harder than before. I heard his friends begin laughing as I tried to get off the ground. Randy stepped on my back, and I looked up to see my parents. looked up to see parents flooding into the backyard. Troy held up a gun and threatened to shoot if anyone intervened. Aw, look at the little pussy. You're not so strong now, huh, punk? You mess with me and I come back, you motherfucker. This is what you get for breaking my fucking arm. Randy yelled at me as he began kicking me in the gut. I coughed frantically and tried to crawl away again. Randy laughed and tried to kick me in the head. I grabbed his foot and pushed him backwards onto the grass. I hurried to my feet and ran into the house. I heard someone run after me, and as I was running through the kitchen, I was pushed against the countertop. I watched as Keith smashed a bottle of alcohol on the overhead cabinets. I closed my eyes tight as I was drenched in whatever alcoholic beverage it was. I was thrown away from the counter by Keith and into the living room. Randy ran into the room and kicked me in the gut while I was down. Kill him, Jeffrey. With a voice yelling at me, I felt something in me snap again. My resolve snapped. I grabbed Randy's foot as he came in for another kick and twisted it until I heard a gratifying crack. I felt the smile spread over my face as I pulled his now broken foot, forcing him to the ground. I stood up and kept my tight grip on his leg as he screamed and writhed in pain. I began stomping on his stomach as he lay on the ground, screaming for someone to help him. I stomped in his stomach once more and watched as the blood began to escape from his stomach. I heard a gunshot, and my head snapped to the side to look at where the sound came from. Troy was holding the gun, but his hand was shaking a lot. I began walking towards him, and he walked forward despite his obvious fear. When he was about to smack me with the handle of his gun, I grabbed his hand and twisted it like I had twisted Randy's ankle. He screamed in pain and fell to the ground, giving up. I was about to cause him some more pain when a very sharp, piercing pain shot through my shoulder. I yelled out in pain and ran for the stairs. I barely recognized were there. Keith shot off more shots as I ran up the stairs and into the first open door I found. It was a bathroom. Hearing Keith running down the hallway, I grabbed the towel rack and pried it from the wall, destroying part of the wall in the process. As Keith came to the doorway, I swung the towel rack and hit him in the arm, which was holding the gun. There was a loud crack, and Keith dropped the gun, yelping in pain. When he stopped, his breasts were ragged, and he grabbed the towel rack and began to try to pry it from my hands. In the process of trying to get it away from me, I backed into the counter and hit my head on the shelf. I closed my eyes as I was drenched in something, and when I opened my eyes, I felt like my eyes were burning. I put my hands over my eyes and began screaming at the pain that flew over me. When I recovered myself, I looked up to see Keith holding a lit Zippo, chuckling to himself. Before I could question him, he threw the Zippo at me, and suddenly my whole body felt like it was burning. I screamed in pain as I fell to the ground, rolling on the floor, barely remembering what I had learned in elementary school. I ended up rolling out of the bathroom and down the stairs. I vaguely remember frantic adults as they tried to figure out what to do before I passed out in the front entryway. Time skip. I awoke about a month ago, and according to the doctors, I was lucky to only get second-degree burns, mainly because one of the neighbors had called 911 when they had heard the gunshots. But along with me getting burned, Lou was released from JDC because Keith confessed to attacking us. Lou came to see me every day, and of course I couldn't talk. However, that didn't keep me from trying to nod. Although most days it hurt even to move my fingers. However, the pain subsided in the last week. Today they were going to take the bandages off my face. Apparently the other liquid that set me ablaze was bleach, so my parents were already suspecting me to be pale as fuck. But I waited patiently right now, along with my family, to see how my face turned out. The doctor was really taking a sweet time to take off the bandages, but when I could finally see my mom covered her eyes and leaned into my dad's shoulder right at the sight of me, I jolted out of bed and ran to the mirror, over the single sink in the room. I put a hand over my right cheek as I looked at my pale reflection. My hair was singed off, had barely grown back. I looked like I had a horrible buzz cut, but what I loved the most was the fact that my eyes seemed to pop, and my skin felt like leather, oddly enough. The rest of the day, I was busy rubbing my skin raw, while my parents talked to the doctor about different people they could go check my mental state, especially since burn victims have been known to have severe anxiety. Although, I thought I was fine. After waiting forever with Lou, I was released to go home. I was given clothes to replace my burnt ones. They were basically the same because what if it was my favorite outfit or something, I guess. On the entire way home, I was staring at myself through the rearview mirror. The day passed really quick, but when it came time for me to chill out and sleep, I didn't want to. I wanted to stay awake and see my face. I sneaked downstairs when my parents finally went to sleep and grabbed a knife from the kitchen. I went to the bathroom and let my urges to press the knife to the corner of my mouth. I leaned over the sink as I began to cut into my cheeks as far as I wanted to go, then repeated it to the other cheek, and when I was done, I stared at my wonderful masterpiece. I turned on the faucet to wash my face, and the knife I used to cut my beautiful smile. I heard a gasp and snapped my head to look at my mom, who was standing in the bathroom doorway. I tilted my head at her expression and wanted to frown at her. "Mom?" I asked. "Am I beautiful?" My mom smiled, but I noticed the fear in her eyes as she glanced at the knife in my hand. She nodded and began to back out the doorway. You're very beautiful, honey. Let me go get Dad so we can show him too. Okay?" She said. She waved at me and walked away. I followed her out of the bathroom to see her run for her bedroom. "Honey, get the gun or phone or something. Jeff, he's..." My mom said, but stopped when she saw me in the doorway. My grip tightened on the knife as I stared at my mom. "You lied," I said firmly as I walked into the bedroom. I noticed my dad slipping off to his closet, but paid no mind for the moment. "No, honey, you're very beautiful. I would never lie to you," she said, trying to get me to back away. I began to grind my teeth together as I watched her hold her hands out to me. "You're lying!" I yelled and ran at her. She began to run away from me, but I grabbed her by the hair and pulled her head back as I stabbed her several times in the back. She screamed out in pain as I twisted the knife in her back, slowly pushing it deeper. I heard the loading of a gun and pulled my knife out of her, but dragged her on the ground behind me. Before my dad could shoot me, I let go of my mom's hair and grabbed the gun from him. I stabbed his hand, pulled him forward slightly. I then grabbed his head and began forcing the knife against his temple. He screamed in agonizing pain as I pushed it into his skull, and it cracked, letting me turn the knife in his brain. He fell limp in my arms, and I felt my mom tug my ankle. She pulled me to the ground. I stood up and stabbed the hand attached to my ankle. She screamed out in pain as I removed the knife and stabbed her in the neck. Blood began gushing out of her neck as I left her there to die, choking on her own blood. As I opened the door to Lou's room, I watched him silently for a moment. He turned in his sleep and groaned, and I said that was my invitation in. I walked up to his bed, and Lou suddenly woke up. He sat up suddenly in his bed, looked over at me. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out of his mouth as I smiled at him. I jumped into his bed, and he screamed as I pressed him flat on the bed. I began stabbing him in the chest repeatedly, not stopping until I was satisfied. When I looked back up at his face, he smiled at me. I felt myself crack away from insanity for a small moment as I looked at his dead, smiling face. I screamed out loudly as I held my hands to the side of my face. My vision began to fade in and out of darkness as I began to hear several footsteps. I remembered nothing after the door slammed open, except the screams of the pathetic human lives I took.